All right, back on Steel and Vance, and we are going to dip back into the politics and the politics behind housing. Premier Eby again announcing that stratas can no longer restrict rentals to boost housing supply or ban children unless in a 55 plus building. Lynda, that's got a lot of people talking.
Yeah, me too, because I live in a strata, and nothing against renters, but essentially government is bigfooting our strata councils and saying, we're going to tell you what to do with your biggest asset. So there are questions, and our next guest is the guy with the answers. Tony Giaventu is the executive director of CHOA, which is the Condo Homeowners Association of BC. Tony, thank you so much for joining us. You've been very busy this week. Let me ask you, what are your thoughts? I mean, is this really the answer to solving the housing crisis, the rental shortage?
Well, I don't think it is, because one of the challenges, if you follow the language that was being used, is this has somehow been linked to affordability of housing. And it really, condo housing isn't affordable housing. If you're a landlord, you need to look at your mortgage, your strata fees, your repair and maintenance costs, your insurance, your taxes. And by the time you put all of those things together, we're looking at one bedroom, two bedroom units, $2,000, $2,500, $3,000 a month. It's not affordable family housing. Another challenge that we have with a lot of strata housing stock is that much of it is one bedroom units. So we do have a real shortage of housing for families. Absolutely no question about it. But taking away the rental bylaws for a constituency that are predominantly self-managed is going to be it's going to be a big step. It's going to lay on a lot more work for these people.
So there are a lot of layers to unpack around this, whether or not you get a bad renter in your building, and then the strata has to deal with that, and how do you remove the bad renter. But there's also, I believe, I'm not a strata member, I don't live in a strata, but I have friends who have lived in one for 25 years, and they've been on the wait list for the lottery to be able to rent out their place. Like, are there some within a strata who say, yeah, you know what, great, the grandfathered in restrictions are going to be gone?
One of the options that we proposed to government, rather than eliminate rentals entirely, was amend the bylaw or amend the act so it required a minimum of 25% of the units be rented. This would open up the door on a lot of the units that otherwise weren't available. Of the 300,000 units that are quoted as having rental bylaws, most of them actually permit rentals of some sort. 5, 10%, a category or a number like that. And many of them don't have full occupancy of all of their rentals. So in many ways, this is trying to target a problem that isn't really a problem. Another challenge that exists for investors and buyers is if you're purchasing into a strata, in advance if there are going to be rental bylaws and if there's limitations. So this isn't a surprise to people.
Right, and that's your category,
well,
right?
Yeah, exactly. And let me ask you this, though, because this only affects stratas that were built before 2010 that were allowed to restrict rentals. And I think a lot of potential speculators or investors are going, ooh, now I'm interested in buying again because it was a deterrent to have the rental restriction.
Well, and that excuse me, we've seen that already. At this point, if you're buying into a building that has rentals, you're going to be competing with other people with rental restrictions who are probably going to purchase for the purpose of living there. Removing rentals opens this up wide open to speculators and investors. And from the contacts we receive regularly in inquiries, there are a lot of speculators and investors on the go. So I think that for the average family or the average buyer who's going to be looking in at these units, they suddenly have a new level of competition in this market.
Obviously, you have in-depth knowledge on this. Were you a part of the discussions prior to the sweeping changes being announced?
Yeah, there were a number of committees that were set up. There were discussions 5 years ago when this was raised, and we raised all of these points then, which is why they didn't proceed with repealing the rental bylaws at that time. Right. And even most recently, there were committees and reviews where they received recommendations that this is really not a solution. So another stat that you have to look at is these 2,900 units that have been given an exemption from the vacancy tax because of rental bylaws, right, versus how many Airbnbs are also.
Yeah, that's where we were going to go next for sure. Oh my goodness, yes.
when you look at the total numbers across the board of these different Airbnb facilities across the province, it's like 50,000 units. It's a huge number.
It's a huge number just in Vancouver proper. There's something like 6,600 Airbnbs. And, they say, oh, well, the city's already governing that and taking some fees and what have you. We all know that there's a ton of these suites that are operating full time, breaking the laws. And I don't see that benefiting the city or helping the sort of housing crisis. Do you think the Eby government's going to cast its eye to the Airbnb next?
I would hope so. Conventional Airbnbs where you're the resident, you live there, people come and stay with you overnight. Those are great. And they're great in stratas too, because the owner is there, they're responsible for their visitors and their guests. It's like having weekend guests. It's no different. But when you look closer and peel back the curtain a little bit, you'll find that there's quite a number of investors who have 5, 10, 20 units or more, and they're basically running them like a small hotel out of a building.
Yeah.
They're residential buildings. These are not hotels. They're residential buildings.
Tony, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We could dive even deeper into all of this.
It goes forever. This is a long discussion.
Thank you so mumuch, Tony. Tony Gioventu, Executive Director of CHOA. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks. Bye for now.
I love it. And Airbnb, David Eby, Premier.
We're going to talk about that more. Let's talk about that more.
We will.
Yeah.
But coming up next on Steel and Vance, stunned motorist witnessed a highway shootout between RCMP and car thieves.
It's crazy.
What the hell is wrong with people?
What the hell is wrong with people is next.